Did you guys watch Interstellar? The movie about space exploration and the Earth is dying and they're traveled somewhere to find a new place to live, and in the end this happens, and that's okay. I'm not going to give the movie away. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's pretty amazing. But don't worry so much about the science aspect of it. That wasn't really the most remarkable thing to me about the movie. I thought the most remarkable thing was a question about space exploration. That would we as human civilization get to a point in time where we need to leave our planet and find a new planet, right? And is that a huge reason why we need space exploration? Because the planet will die and we need to find other homes. And human beings have always been about finding new homes. Or is the message that we actually don't want to get to that stage? We need to look inward and protect our home, because Earth is our home. And if we keep looking at the stars, we forget where we stand. And that's a huge problem. So I think that's an inherent tension in this debate. And a big tension and the biggest tension probably between people who are pro-space exploration and people who are against it, right? Which one should we prioritize? Should we look to the stars and keep our focus there? Or should we focus here and ignore the stars for a while? And secondly, what do we get? What are the benefits of space exploration? And what are the harms, the disadvantages of space exploration? Okay, so let's do this in a slightly more organized manner. Space exploration. Now, so the exact scope of the debate is pretty broad. You can talk about space tourism, where people fly into the stratosphere, the subspace kind of ozone layers. I'm not sure exactly where the layers are, but high enough for you to start feeling like weightlessness, but not really getting into space, or even proper full-on space travel. And there's a lot of private investment there now, and that's an interesting aspect of this debate. Or it could be about deep space exploration, where you send like the Hubble telescope, or where recently, a few weeks ago, scientists landed a capsule, landed something, an observatory drone on a comet, right, on an asteroid, and it's the first time we've ever done that. And it's very difficult to do because you need to chase it and you need to land on it. And it was a huge, remarkable achievement for science and for man, right? But that kind of space exploration, where you're trying to reach into the galaxy, is wholly done by states, largely Americans and some Europeans and Russians, Chinese, level of space exploration, right? So mostly state funded. So you have the deep space exploration and you have the near space exploration. For the purpose of this debate, and I think when you talk about much of the pushing science and advancement, it is largely a debate about state-run, so governments managed space exploration that goes pretty much deep space or mid-space exploration, right? So not just commercial satellites, not really private companies doing holidays in space, okay? So deep space exploration, sending satellites deep into space, trying to find that other home or discovering new things. Why is that a good thing? A good thing. Well, firstly, because it's exploration, man and woman, because discovery has always been part of human nature. The urge to explore, to find new worlds, to do all of these different things have been an important part of humanity. It's how we push ourselves, it's how we find new things. I mean, you think about it, right? So the early explorers who thought the world was flat, set sail anyway, worried that they would fall over, but they needed to discover what's on the other side, right? So we take the spirit of curiosity and discovery beyond just finding places, but finding things, finding answers. It is the reason why we are scientists. It's the reason why we have come this far along in our civilization and created so many wonderful new things. Because we don't ask ourselves, why is this important? we ask ourselves, what is on the other side? Why does this work the way this works? And how can I find out more? And how can I find out more? This intense curiosity defines who we are, right? And it is an essential part of being a human being. Okay, so I think this is a big argument. It's not a very tangible one. It's not one that you can measure. But at the same time, it's one that you can show has existed throughout human civilization for an extent in which we can measure human civilization, right? So space exploration is an extension of our innate desire to discover and to explore, and something that will never, never, ever go away and shouldn't go away, because if we take it away, then we will lose what it is to be humans, what it is to be curious, right? We will also lose some amazing benefits, and here is the tangible stuff for you tangible people, and people who love tangible things. So the few big benefits, right? So the first one in terms of technology. Now, detractors of space exploration will say, hey, you spend loads of money, what have we got? It's not like all of us can go to the space station. Only some people go to the space station. But in the process of trying to make this journey, we've come up with incredible amounts of technology. Many regular use things that you use in everyday life were discovered by companies like NASA, by all these private companies, some of them, in trying to reach the moon or trying to reach outer space, right? Kevlar is a good example, and some surgical procedures are the examples. All of these different things. We do experiments also in space to see the impact of gravity, the impact of weightlessness, the impact of vacuums. So it's really advanced our understanding of science and technology, and all of these things have real practical applications down here on Earth for you and for me, right? So just because the astronauts are going to space doesn't mean that has no impact on you. It has a very, very real everyday impact on you, and that's a huge thing. Okay. We also can discover things through new compounds and minerals that we can find in space. This has been something that people have been thinking about a lot, right? Like the whole Avatar unobtainium kind of thing, to find, say, new materials that can give us energy, new materials that will burn differently. And we've discovered some things, but nothing so huge that it's really changed our way of life, right? So, but it's something that you can also extend as a possible benefit of discovery, benefit of space exploration. The last thing is also we're going to find answers to questions, right? If we want to try to understand how the universe was formed, how the universe is changing, the answers lie in space, right? When there was the Big Bang and the Earth was created and the universe is still kind of expanding out of that bang, then we need to be able to see how it's expanding and measure its impacts on other people. Not other people, but within the larger boundaries of space, right? Knowing how some of these things operate tell us more about ourselves and more about our past. Understanding how black holes work, understanding how stars form and how stars die will tell us a lot about our star, the sun, and what role that star played in our creation, right? So these are answers that we can only find if we go into deep space. And we don't know yet what we're going to learn from this, but we do know that there is so much more that we don't know, that we don't understand, and we really need to find out. Because until we get the data, then all we have now are theories, right? So what is out there? I'm not sure, but I do really want to find out. And that's pretty much the case that you have on the Gov side, okay? A lot of interesting stuff. You have to be a little bit adventurous, but I think if you are, then you can make some pretty powerful arguments about why it is part of our human nature and why we as a civilization can benefit so much more from the things that we discover in deep space. Okay? Now, what do you do in opposition? Opposition, I said, as we agreed before, you're going to be a bit more inward looking. Right? So opposition you're more more realistic, slightly pessimistic, but you don't want to say that you're pessimistic. You say that you're realistic. You look at what's happening here on Earth, and you think that people have their priorities mixed up. They are so focused on what's happening so far away, they forget what's happening to the person next door to them. They want to help charities on outside the planet, but they forget about the kid who lives down the street who has nothing to eat, or the homeless person who's sleeping in the subway, right? So they say like, focus on us, okay? Stop burning all this money into space. Yeah, it's kind of cool, and it'll be nice to know all of these things, but you know what's better than just this nice stuff is saving lives, right? It's helping people get out of poverty. We're struggling to raise money to meet the UN's Millennium Development Goals, struggling to fight Ebola, struggling to get countries out of debt, struggling to stop wars, struggling to protect women and children. Why don't we focus on those things? And to some extent they have a point, right? So you talk about priorities here on Op, right? And you say we need to focus on Earth. You're spending billions on chasing the stars, right? Burning money, literally. And yeah, maybe we learn some things, but we can still learn some things in those labs. We managed to learn things in these labs before we went out to space anyway, right? So there's no reason why we can't learn things in labs, and we can use this money directly to help us. Yeah, maybe we invent Kevlar, we invent some few other things. That doesn't say we wouldn't have invented those if we didn't go to space, but what about spending all these resources on saving people, on solving diseases, or addressing crime, conflict, making those things a priority, because resources are finite and you need to prioritize how those resources are used, right? So I think that's quite a powerful argument, which you can then build and develop and give many examples of different things that we need to prioritize and solve, and show how we are missing our priorities, and that's a big problem. Some other things you can develop other than this, than the priorities, are some harms perhaps of space exploration, and that is either the pollution that it causes, right? So there are lots of things floating up in space, space garbage. The rockets have boosters that fall off. Some of them will burn in the atmosphere. Some of them fall back onto Earth. Most of Earth's surface is oceans, so most of the time they fall into oceans, but that's also pretty bad because we've got islands and islands of floating garbage. Most of that garbage isn't really from the space, but it's still bad. But you also get these things floating in the atmosphere. There are lots of junk satellites. The telecommunications companies and stuff sent up to do GPS positioning, but those satellites are not functioning. They're just hanging there, floating in space, and sometimes causes interference, but sometimes just makes it really difficult for other people to go up, and hasn't really caused a direct problem to us yet, but could be, right? Because these things are going to fall down eventually and going to cause a problem. So maybe we need to be sure about what the problem is before we keep sending more and more of these things out there into deep space. Although this is not really an issue yet with deep space, because deep space is just gigantic. It's like throwing a grain of sand into the ocean, or even less than that. People also do worry about the militarization of space. Militarization. Okay, so whether or not anybody's putting guns in space. The UN has a treaty about the ownership of space. So all these big countries signed it and said, yeah, we won't put guns there, but we're still not really sure whether they are, they aren't. And when there's an actual competition for space, then you start fighting over it, right? You start fighting over these minerals, which is exactly what happened in the lesson that we learned from human history. People wanted to discover the world, and you had the early travelers, right? You had the Columbuses and the Alfonso de Albuquerques and all these other people, Vasco da Gamas, who traveled the world and found these new places and then colonized them, took all their minerals, took all the people, enslaved them because they had some superior technology like ships and guns. And then, ended up fighting with each other and caused a lot more people to die. So maybe that could happen with space, right? When we start getting really competitive over it, maybe we're going to get very insecure and we're going to get conflicted with each other. So again, the answer is to focus on our priorities, to look inward. When we haven't even resolved some relatively basic things, like ensure everybody has access to clean water, like ensure that everyone is free from persecution or can go to school without being shot in the face. Why are we so worried about space? Maybe what we need to do is just refocus and relate. Take a breath, get off the pace, chill a little bit, don't lose your place. Let's not be too worried about space, race. Do not have a future as a rapper. But I hope you can see the balance in the debates and pros and cons on both of these sides. It's an interesting debate, one that may not directly affect you, but is all around you in a way, right? Something that goes back to the initial question of man and what we are interested in, men and women, and what we want to discover, and of the beauty in the world that exists out there, and how much of a priority that should be. Is there a way we can actually balance these things, or should we choose one over the other? Happy debating, boys and girls, and learn a little bit about space.